Is it your hope or your intention that this becomes part of the sort of fabric of the conversation ahead of the November election, that understanding that nothing short of America's role in the world is on the ballot in November?
Well, I happen to believe that that's true. I think that we are in a weakened position today. And one of the things that has troubled me is the failure of the administration, of the president, to understand the real value for us and the unique value for us of allies and friends in the world. I some while ago told one of the senior members of the administration, at what point do you guys realize that it's probably not a great idea to antagonize everybody in the world at the same time? And so I think that if we are going to recapture our leading position, it's only going to be through working with our allies. No one has pressured our allies on defense spending more than I have. I did it the entire nearly 5 years I was Secretary of Defense. I admit I wasn't very successful, but we do have to keep the pressure on them so that they do come up with their fair share in protecting their own security. But even if we're not successful, driving them away is a terrible mistake, because just think in terms of the Chinese structural economic reforms that we think are necessary, how much more powerful our position at the table would be if on our side of the table, in addition to us, we had the Europeans, the Japanese, the Australians, the Indians, and so on, all in a single voice telling the Chinese, these are the changes you have to make. Otherwise, there will be serious economic penalties. So we need to try and keep the pressure on our allies to do more. But we also need to understand that they are a unique asset for us in our leadership role in the world.
Talking about our relationship with our allies at a time when Donald Trump, and I'm thinking about the way he evaluated the looks of the First Lady of France. I'm thinking about the disparaging things he's had to say about Angela Merkel. I'm thinking about the love letters he brags about writing to Kim Jong-un. I mean, to make it tangible, Donald Trump cannot be president. He cannot do what you just described, muster America's allies to answer Chinese aggressions.
Well, my argument is that we have to deal with these authoritarian leaders, but we certainly don't have to say we love them. I'm against using our military to try and bring change to other countries, to bring democracy to other countries. But we always have to be a voice for freedom and a voice for political rights and a voice for human rights. And everybody needs to know where we stand. And despite our own internal problems, the one thing most people know around the world is that at least we are trying to improve ourselves. We're trying to fix our problems. There's no question these other authoritarian countries aren't making that effort. In fact, they're headed in the other direction. And so you have to deal with these guys. You don't have to say you love them.
And on the day that the military, including General Milley, in fatigues, was seen clearing peaceful protesters on the streets right outside the White House, do you think the world thought that we were trying to deal with our problems?
Well, I think what we have seen is that the Chinese and the Russians and others are pointing to this and saying, now you in the U.S. have no right to criticize us for what we may or may not do in Hong Kong, or what we do in Ukraine, or what we do with dissenters in Moscow, because you're no better than we are. So we've handed our adversaries a propaganda windfall in certain respects, and I think that I've made the point before. I was opposed to the use of the Insurrection Act, allowing the president to use regular military forces in Lafayette Square, because people need to understand the regular military forces, the regular army, is trained primarily to do one thing, and that's kill our enemies. Whereas the National Guard is trained not only to take care of natural disasters and to try and help out with things like the pandemic. They're also trained in crowd control. They have good relations with the local law enforcement because the National Guard is from those places. They take off the uniform in that town and go back to work the next day. So I didn't see anything on Lafayette Square that seemed to me could not be handled by the law enforcement, regular law enforcement that was present, and the National Guard.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.